My first guest is a dear friend. He is also a combat veteran who retired at the rank of Brigadier General in March of 2019 after nearly 40 years of serving in uniform. During his decades of service, Scott Perry commanded at the company level, the battalion level, and the brigade level. Notably, he commanded the 2nd Battalion, 104th General Support Aviation Regiment, where they were deployed to Iraq from 2009 to 2010. During that time, he flew 44 combat missions. Today, Congressman Perry represents the 10th Congressional District of Pennsylvania, and he is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman Perry, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks, Tony, very much. And your setup couldn't be more timely. As we watched the speech that President Biden gave at the UN, I thought it interesting that you showed the crowd as people got up and walked away. And I just want to remind everybody that the former president, President Trump, when he spoke at the UN, there was not an empty seat in the House. And it's indicative of how America is now looked upon by, and look, I'm not a great fan of the UN. There are globalists who are not interested in the sovereignty of America, or quite honestly, any country. But that having been said, they at least were respectful and in awe of the might of America. That has all now been erased in one fell swoop by President Biden's actions in Afghanistan. And we literally don't have a friend left in the world that trusts us. We literally don't have one friend. If you ask any country, would you trust America right now to have your back in a tough time? I think many would reluctantly come to an answer of yes, but it would be reluctantly, and there would be a pause. President Biden is whistling past the graveyard, not only of American souls, but of the souls of American allies that we have abandoned in the middle of the night and left to the most horrific oppression imaginable on the planet. And he's acting as if it didn't occur. Meanwhile, he goes to the UN and tells everybody that America's back, and doesn't even mention our number one strategic rival, which is China, which I'll remind you is culling their country of any Christianity, is imprisoning and putting into forced labor the Uyghurs and other religious minorities, which is stealing intellectual property, and wishes to dominate via the Communist Party of China the rest of the globe as quickly as possible, and has called America its enemy. Yet our president can't even mention it, and then tells us the threat that we face, that the world faces, is climate change. Meanwhile, people are losing their lives in Afghanistan after we just walked away and left $85 billion of premier military taxpayer-funded equipment. It is unconscionable, and the ramifications are going to come home very, very quickly to the United States of America, right to our living rooms.
Congressman, I think you've answered all of my questions that I had for you, because I was actually going to start with how the president finished in his speech yesterday before the United Nations. He finished with this. He said, quote, "As we look ahead, we will lead. We will lead on the greatest challenges of our time, from COVID to climate, peace and security, human dignity and human rights," end quote. I mean, do other world leaders actually believe that America will lead?
I got to tell you, I looked as he was saying that. Of course, the film clip was of people walking out of the UN, walking out of the speech. No, of course they don't believe it. These are hollow proclamations as he whistles past the graveyard. Everyone knows it. You can't just say it. America has a higher calling. We have this duty, that this mantle of responsibility as the only beacon of truth and light in the world. And you can't just say it. It's your actions that count, not just your words. And those words ring hollow 3 weeks after we just walked out of Afghanistan, left Christians behind, left American citizens behind, left the people that worked with us for 20 years behind, and not only left them behind, Tony, but we're actually helping their enemies slaughter them right now. That's a really, really tough thing to say, but we're paying Pakistan, who supports the Taliban, the Haqqani network. I'm sure you're familiar with the leadership in the Taliban. These are terrorists. Some of them we left out of Guantanamo. Some of them of the Haqqani network that have an FBI $10 million price for their arrest and capture. They're leading the country that we're now paying. It is unconscionable. So you can't just say it and do the exact opposite. Everybody sees right through him.
Yeah, and you said this before, but just to underscore it, the $82 billion worth of equipment, 350,000 AR rifles, I think 35,000 machine guns. I mean, just so much stuff that we left behind. But Congressman Perry, so often, especially, I'm just going to speak to our audience, Christians and others, we don't focus too much on foreign policy. We're interested more in domestic policy. You know, they always talk about the pocketbook, what affects people. But our foreign policy cannot be seen separately from our domestic stability and security. What are your greatest concerns about how Americans are going to be affected by the decisions of the foreign policy decisions of the Biden administration?
Well, first and foremost, Tony, is this is literally a battle between good and evil, and it is a battle between Christianity and those who wish to stamp it out, not only in America but across the globe. And the Biden policy, which is not going to stand up for the Judeo-Christian beliefs that is responsible for the blessings in this country, and those are the things that are really. I know that maybe we don't see that far away, but they burned churches right here in Washington, D.C., and barely a peep. These things have real, absolute consequences. But of course, some of the things that you're going to see are going to be economic. You're going to see prices continue to rise. If you're paying more at the grocery store, if you're paying more at the gas station, if you're having trouble making ends meet while you try to decide whether to send your children to public school and deal with the tyranny that's occurring there, or pay for a Christian-based education and pay your taxes too, the price of that is going up. And quite honestly, you're going to be lucky if you can get a spot as public school districts hemorrhage their children, because parents don't want to have their children suffer under the tyranny of not only the Biden administration, but their sycophants in the several states that are enforcing their policy. And of course, there's very little pushback to any of that from a realistic standpoint. It is families are having these discussions right now. It's not just the old discussions of how do we make ends meet with the mortgage and do we go on a vacation. Now it's, can we continue to send our child to school, and do we want what's happening with critical race theory being forced upon them? Do we want mask mandates? And I will tell you, Tony, you know this is coming. The vaccine mandates for children who have a 99.9% plus survivability rate. We don't do this for anything else. This is about control, and it goes to the very heart of everything we believe in this country. Somebody has to stand up and say, absolutely not.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And all of these things are interconnected. And Congressman Scott Perry, I want to thank you for being one of those who's standing up and saying, no, not on my watch. And we appreciate you joining us tonight.